I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike Stabile. This is the Why Should We Care panel, focused on nonprofits and other sort of charitable endeavors in the adult industry. I'm with the Free Speech Coalition, which is the industry trade organization focusing on, protecting the rights of those who work in the industry as well as those who work, the workers in the industry. We're not actually specifically a nonprofit, so I'm going to let we're more of an advocacy organization and let these guys talk a bit more. But I would say to start off, maybe if you could go around and sort of talk about sort of who you are and what your organization is, and introduce yourself to the people in the audience. Leah, do you want to start?
Absolutely. My name is Leah Tanit. I'm the founder and president of Pineapple Support, which is a nonprofit organization that provides mental health care and emotional support to adult industry professionals.
And Tim?
Sure, yeah. I'm Tim Henning. I'm the executive director of ASACP. We've been the adult industry funded child protection charity since 1996.
Emma?
I'm Emma Rainville. I'm also with Pineapple Support. I'm a fundraising chair.
And Kat, why don't you tell us a little bit what you guys are doing at Fancentro?
Hi, I'm Kat, VP of Marketing of Fancentro. We are a platform, a social media platform that allows influencers to monetize their content.
So we all come from sort of different areas of the industry. I think that, and we use our platforms in different ways to improve our community. I think that, as we start out, it may be best, I'd love to hear a little bit more from Tim about ASACP and how it got started, because I think that the people in the audience, when I look at sort of people who are coming in, it's people who are trying to figure out, it's people who are interested in making our industry better. And you've probably been at it longer than anybody else on this panel. ASACP has been really sort of legendary in the adult industry. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about how the organization started and how you got involved?
Sure, yeah. It's been just about 24 years. So I guess this was probably somewhere in 1995. I was a university student finishing up. Internet was brand new. My background's computer science and psychology. Had no idea I would end up doing this. I was doing programming work to pay my way through school for all kinds of companies, mainstream and adult. I did work for like Alta Vista, like things that don't exist anymore that only old people would know. And then I ran across the board after finding porn. And at this time, there was maybe like 1,000 porn sites. And the top porn sites were Persian Kitty and The Hunt, hands down. And I saw that they were making money on this, wanted to figure it out, found why not, started doing some work in the industry, met Alec Helmy, did some work for him. At the time, XBiz didn't exist. He had a site called foradultsonly.com, the number 4. And part of this was a picture post. I don't know if you remember back in the day, this was 9600 baud dial-up days, right? So picture posts were the way to drive traffic, free traffic back in the day, sort of the first version of, MGPs type of thing, right? Only it was just a picture and it took, a minute or two to load one picture, right? Everything back then was instantaneous. You submitted something to a search engine anywhere and it was online instantaneously. There was absolutely no moderation of anything. It was completely the wild, wild west. And over some time, we'd noticed on his picture post that there was at least one person that was posting child pornography descriptions, legal images, but just descriptions, just for shock value, just to get clicks. Back then, there was no conversion on anything. You got paid 2 or 3 cents a click, right? So we banned the IP, come back, ban the IP, come back. Some months went by, and Alec hit me up. It was probably 3 months later, 2 or 3 months later, said, look, I have this idea. This isn't cool. There should be a way to report this. And this was, pre-NCMEC, pre-InHope, pre-IWF. These are government funded child protection organization. So we were actually the first. We invented this. Someone would have, of course, eventually, but we were the first to put out there a way to report this online. And how we did this was had an initial conversation with the FBI field office in LA. Back then, mid-90s, cops knew very little about digital technology or the internet. It was all new to them. They thought it was a fantastic idea. They did their checks, letter of understanding, and off to the races we went. And it pretty much remained a grassroots, funded completely out of pocket by ALEC for 6 years. And it was just a way for people in the industry to report things that were questionable in nature. It was actually a very visionary idea at the time, considering the era. And the rest is history. In early 2000s, 2002, we hired Joan Irvine, who came from a Fortune 500 top saleswoman of the year, 20 years running background. And she was the one that built out our memberships and sponsorships and our funding from the industry. But that's how we got started.
And what's the scope now? I mean, obviously I see ASACP on all sides.
So to give you a perspective, I mean, the scope of just the tip line, we do more than just that now, but the tip line back then we would get, started out just a handful, 20 a day reports. It was all email. After a few years, that got into the hundreds and had to start developing technology to manage it better. At the peak, I would say, we were dealing with 15 to 20,000 reports a month. This was pre-Financial Coalition Against Child Pornography days when you could find it easily on the internet. It was billable, believe it or not. Looked just like regular porn sites, only they were child porn. And now we do a volume of 3,000 to 5,000 a month, just in reports. And we are the only way to report this anonymously in the world. So if you go anywhere, any government tip line, IWF in the UK, CyberTip in Canada, National Center for Missing Exploited Children in the US, any of them, the first thing that they do when you make a report is log your MAC and IP address and want to know who you are and how you found it. We don't ask any of those questions. We just want to know, the URL, period. And our system automatically checks to see if it's live, and then it's off to be reviewed if it's not a duplicate report.
That's fascinating. I mean, I've obviously been in the industry probably about 2 decades, and I've known of ASACP since I first became involved, but I did not know that history, and that's super fascinating. Leah, you're much newer. I mean, you're probably the sort of, the younger end of this. Why don't you tell a little bit of how Pineapple Support got started and, what your mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. The new kid on the block. So I've been in the adult industry for around a decade now. Previous to Pineapple Support, I was a fetish and bondage model, and always kind of on the outskirts, but going to conferences, dipping in, and really, really enjoying the industry and all the people in it. And it was in 2018 for the Expos Awards that I came over to LA, and it was my first big award show. It was very exciting. This was going to be I'm actually going to take this on as a full-time career. I love it so much. It's what I'm going to do. And at the beginning of the show, they have the memorial for everyone who has passed that year. And there were so many people. And there were so many young faces. And then after that video, the girl who was presenting was talking about the five girls that took their lives within the last 3 months. And that it really, really hit me. It was being someone that was not in the US, not so heavily involved in the adult industry. I had no idea that there were these problems, that people were suffering so much, that there wasn't adequate support for performers in the industry. And yeah, I remember sitting at the awards show with my glass of champagne crying, which wasn't a good look with the mascara down my face. But yeah, and then on the way home, when I was flying back from after the AVNs, I couldn't sleep on the flight the whole way. All I was thinking was, why hasn't someone done something about this? Why isn't there something in place to support performers that need mental health care? This is a huge problem. So by the time I landed in Barcelona, I was set. This is what I was going to do. This is, someone had to step up. Someone had to put something in place, and why shouldn't it be me? The saying goes, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? So I spent about a week, 2 weeks scribbling stuff down and trying to figure out exactly how I was going to do this, what I was going to call it, and by mid-February, I had my plan, I had it ready, and got my teeth sunk into it, and we launched in April 2018. So it was pretty swift, but for me, I just felt like every single day that there wasn't something available, that this wasn't in place, was another day that somebody could take their life, that somebody could lose their life because of ill mental health. And so for me, it really was a race against time. So yeah, it's been really, really incredible. We launched in April. It was a really hard slog for around 8 months. I was funding all the therapy and everything else myself, because imagine how hard it is to get sponsors for something where you've got nothing to show. Hey guys, you don't know who I am. I've created this thing. I promise it's going to work. Do you want to give me some cash? It doesn't really work like that. So we really worked damn hard well, we still work damn hard, but it was a struggle for the first kind of 8 months. And then Pornhub got in touch and said that they wanted to sponsor us. And from then it's just been, the response has been incredible. We've got 120 something therapists. That's across Canada, the US, South America, UK, Europe, and Australia. And we've given support now to well over 1,000 performers, which is just amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Incredible. I obviously have known you since the beginning with this, and it's amazing to see as it's grown, just the scope and also the industry participation, and also the people you've been able to bring in terms of not just Pornhub, but people like Emma, who obviously come from a more of a nonprofit background and can really help guide and shape the organization. So I'd love to hear from Emma, who's sort of coming from a unique perspective in this, how you got involved and sort of what you bring to it.
Sure. So I met Leya in 2018, September of 2018. I had heard of Pineapple Support that August for the first time, and her and I ran into each other in Prague just before the Why Not Awards. And Leya has a knack for getting women in with a glass of champagne in their hand before and during an award show to have mascara running down their face. So I come from a very mainstream background, both in business and in fundraise, 501Cs that I sit on boards for. And she had me bawling. She told me her story and what she was trying to accomplish. And then again, a year later in the same city, Prague, we ran into each other again. And I said, okay, when do you want to put a board together? Because I want to be on it. You're doing some incredible things. And I think that at this point, you're ready for a board to come in and, make sure all the finances are legitimate, and you're at a point where you're growing and you need actual employees to run this thing. We had a whole conversation about even St. Jude is a fantastic nonprofit. You have to have the right executives in place in order to really move mountains. And so she invited me to join her board, and her and I had a few Skype conversations, and I helped her kind of put together off of CEOs and COOs and some of us that had some fundraising nonprofit backgrounds, so that we knew the rules and the laws, and an attorney. And we put the board together in, was it October last year? Yeah, October last year, 2019. We finally elected everybody in, and here we are all this time later, and she still wows me. She's still just, I've never seen anybody so driven and so passionate about anything, and the self-responsibility that she takes. Not, this has to get done, who's going to do it? We have to remind her, you're the president, you're running this company, you have to let us help you. Because she just is, never met anyone with the work ethic and passion that she has. So I'm not going to stop it. It's true. She's unbelievable. She's such a doll. And when she tells you that she funded everything for a long time, and still puts everything she has to it. So to be led by a woman who lives it by example every day, and just, I mean, we sat, when COVID first started, we sat, and I remember sitting across from her in Vegas at the beginning of all of this in January, as she cried because she was so concerned with not being able to give therapy to everybody. So she really wears it on her heart, and what better person to lead and to follow. So that's where I came in, and what we've been just keeping everything nice and organized, and from a financial standpoint, looking to get in some new programs, to get in some new sponsors, and to just keep growing and being able to provide more men and women services.
Amazing. Kat, you come from a totally different perspective, because you are not a traditional nonprofit. You are a for-profit company that has developed tools for fundraising to help any number of causes. So, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about why this is, like, how this got started at Fancentro, and why. Because lots of companies go and they really just, they're there to make money. You know, they might throw a few dollars here or a few dollars there, but you've really made it central at Fancentro to your mission and to who you are. So how did that get started? And maybe talk a little bit about what the initiatives are.
So I'm going to start by saying that one of our biggest brand values is family. And any of you that knows Stan, or that knows like some of the staff of Fancentro, knows that that is a big value for us. So already the company was donating money to different organizations, but not saying anything. So we were not doing it for press, but because they actually cared about it. But one of the things we saw is that the influencers that were in our platform were trying to create their own fundraisers in their own way. And they couldn't do this as efficiently. As you know, some of them were changing donations for nudes. But at some point, this got so overwhelming that we started creating different tools for them. We were actually thinking about this since the Amazon back in August. And we started developing some tools, and then in one way or another, the world got crazy, and then it went from like SOS Australia. So it was all about Australia, and we were trying to raise money for Australia. We raised over $15,000, and this was all the money, you know, that fans were donating thanks to the influencers promoting it. And right now, since the beginning of March, we've been trying to get donations for PPE and medical material that we've donated mainly to New Jersey, because it was one of the biggest states that had this issue. And so far, it's been 6,000 masks that we've been donating, and around 4,000 of those our team brought them by hand. And it's something really nice to see, because everyone, of course, we work with adult influencers, and they're, I don't know, but maybe the world see them as more egotistic people, and they're so charitable. They only want to do good. So we're just happy we have developed the technology to allow them creating this charitable causes.
So you were taking sort of technology that was, I mean, the way that I understand it is that with sort of Nudes for Good, it was people were doing fundraising like adult. You already saw a market of people who were adult influencers and performers who were trying to raise money for causes like the Australian wildfires or other things, but we're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Like we're having people forge their.
There's some influencers were getting maybe the same, screenshot of, yes, I've donated, but it wasn't 100% sure. And then if you get so many volumes of fans donating, then how are you going to send them content back? So they were getting even, some influencers were getting extra help with assistance to be able to send content back. So this way they have everything, they can manage everything through the platform. So let's see what's the next.
Yeah.
Next in 2020.
For those of you who are sort of like, and you're all funded right from Fancentro, so it's not like anybody, it's self-funded, so it's the company is funding all of the technology. You're not asking for anything other than direct consumers. Yeah.
Not at all.
For those of you who are sort of like raising money outside, I mean, I have a little bit of perspective with Free Speech Coalition, how hard it can be sometimes to convince companies. We are a disparate industry, right? There are a lot of people who get involved in adult and build companies in adult and don't necessarily have a connection to the wider industry. I'd be interested to know sort of what your strategies have been in terms of raising money, how you've done it. I mean, Tim, like I said, both you and Leah have been doing it. It started out as a sort of self-funded effort, like Fancentro. How hard or easy was it in the beginning to get money from companies?
Okay, I mean, so for the first 6 years, Alec Helmy funded it out of his own pocket, right? So after that, it was the heyday of adults. So this was early 2000s, right? So the money was flowing. There was a lot of money in adult. If you would go, those shows back in the day in Vegas in the early 2000s, thousands of people came. Huge show floor. Centerpiece booth was probably, a $50,000 booth. I mean, these things it wasn't anything like it is now. So then it was a lot easier to raise the money. Then it became sort of after 08. After 08, it became more difficult. And strategies, our funding comes strictly from adult. We don't take any money from governments or outside sources for many reasons. They often come with strings attached, and we have to remain Switzerland in between the two, right? So for credibility's sake. So now it's just you talk to everyone you can, and people that say no, you keep asking and asking and asking until they say yes. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. Sometimes they hit you up out of the blue and they want to do it. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's 50 conversations, but it's just persistence. That's all it is, and talking to everyone you can.
And do you find that, that people are doing it sort of out of the goodness of their heart and really just believe in the cause, or they want to be associated with it? Like, is there, I often find that sometimes a bit of ego, or
okay. Yeah. I mean, there's different reasons, right? So the ones that do it out of the goodness of their heart and believe in the cause and get it are the ones that hit us up. The ones that hit us up, and I don't have to do much, right? I don't have to sell anything. So we've come up with other ways to value add. So for our sponsorships, we give back almost $7,000 a year in marketing, and that's been independently evaluated. Even though our starting sponsorship is only $5,000. So we've done this for those people who don't really care about it or don't really get it and want something in return. So we've built in, different strategies for everyone, hopefully, but yeah, it's a struggle sometimes, especially with those that don't get it. Yeah.
And Leah, you obviously, I know that you have knocked on so many doors just like Tim, maybe for a shorter period of time, but what has worked for you in terms of raising money? Like when you go in, is it all altruism, or is it, peer pressure or press,
The press obviously does help. Thank you very much, Mike. I mean, it depends. Sometimes it depends on the company, depends on the person. You know, when we first started approaching people, really, which was in September 2019, at the first business to business conference that I attended, we had a fantastic response. Everyone realized that this was something that really should be in place, and they understood why they should be sponsoring. Getting people to actually part with their money takes a little bit longer. You know, but like I said, it's important for us to prove what we can do, and prove that we are making a difference, which I think we've certainly done now. And again, you know, the sponsorship starts from $1,000 a year, so it's really accessible for everyone. And yeah, it's been interesting. I'm getting very used to bothering people. Sending another email. But it's hard at the minute. It's hard at the minute with everything that's going on. There's most companies have put their charitable funding on hold. So to approach new companies now is very tough. So I'm trying to kind of go back to grassroots and see what we can raise little by little with the public. So yeah, it's sometimes you go up to somebody, you sit down with them for 5 minutes, and they say, yes, I'm going to give you X amount. Sign on the dotted line right now, no problems. And then other times, you know, you've got to give it the hard sell and explain why the industry needs this. Explain why, just because they're a affiliate company or a payment processing company, why they should still care. Because, you know, what you hear a lot of times from people is that we don't have direct contact with the models. Why should we donate? I mean, well, if it wasn't for the models, there'd be no industry. There'd be no affiliate program. There'd be, you know, there'd be no point in your payment company. We are all linked, and the very roots of every single company within adults is the models. You know, without them, there is no industry. So yeah, sometimes people need a little bit more swaying and discussion as to what the importance is. But in general, we have a great response.
And I'm interested, like, coming from someone who sat on so many boards outside the industry, do you see a difference in how money is raised for nonprofits within the industry and how it's raised in outside versus inside the industry?
Yeah. I just want to touch on what Leah just said really quick. So I have never caused a child to be in foster care, but I still donate to foster children. Just because you don't have direct, right? Tim's shaking his head. I'm sure Tim did. You may not have done anything in child porn, but why not help? You can still help. You don't have to be direct, have direct contact. But yeah, the industry is very, as Leah's done a phenomenal job of fundraising. I know she can get your heart to just open up, and then that ultimately leads to wallets. I've seen it. It's amazing. We did create a new strategy, somewhat new strategy for Pineapple for some further donations, which does kind of go into the mainstream realm of providing events and those types of things in order to generate revenue. But it's a lot, it's just so more personable in this industry than it is. It isn't just a simple throw it up on Facebook and people will donate. They actually have to understand. And Pineapple has done a fantastic job. Leah has done a fantastic job of creating videos that really bring you inside for our models and for our industry talent, and just their pain and the stigmatism because of their job. So to go back to your question, which I really didn't answer, yes, there's a huge difference. I think that, and even as I met Tim in, I believe it was Portugal recently, the approach on fundraising is very different, and the persistence and getting people to put a humane aspect on it and kind of bring it back around of, these are people, remember humanity, we are part of that. So I was very shocked the first time I sat in with Leya on how deep you had to go in adult. But I also have been super impressed because I sit on a board that mainly targets people of religious background for donations. And the difference, like I think it was Leya who said earlier, our industry, while it does take a lot more one-on-one personal, our industry is very generous, much more than religious sectors or school sectors are. Their hearts and their wallets really do open a lot faster, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that part of that must be, and Tim would know this as well, because he was talking about not taking money from the government, is that we're often on our own, and I think that this, whether you're talking about, reporting child pornography, or whether you're talking about mental health services for sex workers, or whether you're talking about, some of the fundraising that individual sex workers do on their own platforms, or sex worker advocacy, which Fancentro also does, you have the sense that if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it. There's not a huge amount. You don't have, I think that most other nonprofits or most other sort of charitable efforts have some element where you can get a grant, where you can easily get money from, whether it's the Ford Foundation or whether it's the US government or whatever, where you can find a way to do it. And that doesn't, that seems to be a big challenge for, organizations and charities, and that there's a lot of stigma attached to it.
We can get grants, but there's a lot of strings that come attached. And this is something we're actually looking into for Q3 2020 for Pineapple. But our board, Leya, is very choosy about who we let in and what they're going to require of us. But you're right, there is a lot of stigmatism, so there is very few grants available, and the strings that come attached, if for this industry, I've written, I don't know, maybe 60 grant proposals or so. I've never seen anything like what comes with the types of grants that we can get for Pineapple because of the industry and the stigma behind it.
You were talking about strings as well, Tim. What are the sort of things that you avoid as, like, what are the things that you're like, that's a non-starter for us? Or things like that. What are
without throwing, so the kind of strings that come attached for us, we deal with really sensitive information, obviously, right? So, we need to be impartial. We cannot be in the pocket of a government entity or a law enforcement entity, right? We have to be on the side of the industry and on the side of children, and working with relevant authorities and government officials as well. But when you apply for government money, strings are attached. And I'm not going to get into some of those details, but especially for us, we need to remain impartial.
Yeah.
Now, Kat, when you're making that pitch to influencers on your platform who are, like you said, there's this idea that they're self-centered, they're interested in money, they, we get all the sort of sex worker stigma. When you do this outreach, when you decide on a cause, when you decide on something like the wildfires, or the PPE for COVID, where does that come from? Like, how do you make that pitch to those influencers, or are they happy to do it? Like, do you have to do any sort of hard sell, or are they like, you see them lining up to help?
So we usually announce it a week before whatever is going to happen on the platform, wherever cause we're supporting, and then everyone is free to do whatever they want, because again, it's a platform and it's just a tool for them to use it however they want. Of course, sometimes we're a bit spammy, and if we're really interested in something, for example, with the COVID, because I mean, who was going to know that we're going to live a world pandemic? We went again and reached back to those influencers that didn't want to participate. But not everyone is the same. Not everyone wants to support the same causes, so we do respect that. We try to support mostly environmental causes, because everyone cares about the environment. It's very, easy, no politics. We have people from all over the world in our platforms, so we just keep it as neutral as possible.
And do you avoid? I mean, these guys were talking about strings. You want to? I mean, I take it you sort of avoid politics as well. Like, you're not having people raise money for a particular political candidate or something like that.
Yes. No. No. And again, we have people from so many places all over the world. And I think this, since I guess August, it's been kind of crazy with everything that happens. I mean, from Barcelona to South America to United States, it's been, so we try to be impartial in a way and just support very big causes. Also being adult, it's kind of delicate already. What kind of, we would love to support children, for example, but we can't. It's adult. How? And one of the very interesting things is that I guess like 2 years ago, the reason why we started doing this and using influencers for maybe more environmental causes is that we really tried to give money to charities by selling a calendar or whatever. And I guess out of calling 60, everyone said, no, your money comes from adult. And we're like, yeah, but I mean, we're decent human beings and we really want to make a change. And a lot of these influencers, if you calculate the power that they all have, is millions of fans that are very that have real praise for these influencers. So why wouldn't you take the money? It's very confusing. It's like, we just want to do good. So at the end, it's like, okay, whatever. We'll just try to help how we can.
That is, I mean, that's always been for-profit companies. The idea that charities turn away your money is not new. It is. I work with multiple companies where they try to make a donation and someone says, we don't want it. I imagine it's similar to the strings issue, which is people from outside the industry assume that it's sex trafficking, assume that, child pornography is rampant, that this is just sort of what happens, assume that, that there's all sorts of dark stuff going on and they don't want to be associated with it, even if it's a substantial amount of money. I'm interested in knowing sort of what, some of you have been in it for a long time, some of you have been in it, more recently. What is it something you wished you knew when you started, Tim, say in 1996, about what this journey was going to take that now?
Wow, that's a hard question to answer because there's a lot. I guess I reiterate what Leah said and Emma, I think. There's this industry has some of the most caring and generous people I've ever met in my life. And then there's the flip side of that too. Thankfully, it's very few people, I think, in this industry. And, I've dabbled in some other industries and I don't think I've ever come across a group of people that are just so talented, on the forefront, visionary, hardworking, driven, and great people as this industry. And when I first got into it, I had some of the same, ideas about the industry. I think that everyone else does that doesn't know the inner workings of the people of that. And I wish I'd known that sooner. I didn't really get to know that that was the case until shows began in the early 2000s. I was working for ASACP for 6 years before I started to realize this. So I think that was the thing that hit me the most anyway, is the people.
Leah, what about you? I mean, you have the ability to look back like 3 years when you were riding home on that plane in Barcelona. Like, if you could call yourself up, and say, "Hey, listen, be prepared for this," what would it be?
How involved you get emotionally, particularly that was hard. It was the tip of the iceberg. What I discovered when I was in LA, and getting back, and as I said to you, having that feeling that every day we weren't available was a day that someone could lose a life, and every time I heard the news that another person had taken their life in the industry from after launching Pineapple, it was this huge feeling of guilt for not being able to get to them. And, you're not omnipresent. You can't be there in everyone's living room. You can't, that overwhelming feeling was very, very hard to cope with. I think that wasn't something that I anticipated. And also it's, running a nonprofit is life-changing. You have to, everything stops. Everything else stops. It's not, there's no kind of dabbling in this. You can't have there's no modeling anymore. There's no performing anymore. There's no going out and being stupid anymore. You don't have the time. You don't have the time to have that hangover. I don't have the time to do any of that. You've got to be there. I'm considering taking a 3-day holiday, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be the first 3 days I've had off properly in 2.5 years, 3 years, and the guilt. But on the flip side of that, coming across and getting deeper into the adult industry, and being really involved, and all the people, the friends that I've made are just wonderful. I can't ever imagine working in any other industry. I always say to people that every piece of technology was created either for the army or for adult. And the straight-laced people go off to the army, and the weirdos and the uniques and the oddbods all come to adults. So you've got the most intelligent, most innovative, it's incredible. I love this industry so much.
As do I. I mean, it really is sort of a bunch of weirdos. And it's like somebody who came from a circus family. I have found like an alternate home in this weird sort of like, liminal entertainment industry of people who don't fit anywhere else. I'm interested, I know we're sort of wrapping up. I'm interested to know really what your pitch is to these people. Like I want to know sort of like, we've talked about the challenges, but like when you get in a room, like what do you tell them that really makes them, that like, what do you sell them on? Like, is it like, how do you go about it?
Want me to go?
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Because, I mean, everybody thinks, I think that, here's the thing, if we preface it a little bit, I think that, at least with FSC, is that, like, people are happy to have you there and have you doing the things that you're doing, but it's different than them feeling like they need to do it in some ways, right? Like, it's like, okay, you're doing all this great stuff, that's great, keep doing it, and especially with you, Tim, you have something where, like, I imagine, and then maybe this is, you can speak to this as too, sort of the misconception of like, what, like, well, it's already being done. The government does it, you do it. What's your pitch when you go in?
Okay. So my pitch is different. It depends on the audience and the person. And there's no way really to pitch this quickly. There just isn't, right? So my strategy, I need, you know, especially for people who don't really know us or don't really know me or don't really know what we do, then my strategy is to get to know that person a little bit and spend some time with them and fill them in, because it does take that. It's not something you can just explain in 5 minutes, right? But, you know, we do, you know, the tip line is incredibly important. And yet you can say governments do it. Yeah, they do and they don't, right? I mean, government tip lines operate on a budget of, you know, neck mix, like 30 million a year, right? We operate on a budget of a couple $100,000. We feed them tons of reports. We feed all of the hotlines in the world tons of reports because people are less reticent to report to us than they are to the cops directly, especially with something, you know, that is as sensitive as this. Some people have no problem going to their websites and reporting it, but a great many people do. So we get those reports that otherwise would not be reported. We also assist the industry with their issues. So they have something that is questionable, that one of their moderators has found and it's questionable. They're not really sure, or it is definitely, they think, right? Oftentimes, you know, if we didn't exist, that would just get deleted. End of story. So we act as that middleman. So that company does not have to be uncomfortable and directly deal with law enforcement. We do that for them, right? So that makes it a lot easier for them. Authorities and kids are better served because those reports actually end up in the right hands eventually, as opposed to nothing happening with them. So there's the tip line part of it. And then there's RTA, and RTA, you know, allowed back in the day parental filters to actually work properly, because if people remember, they didn't for a long time, right? And there was a system called ICRA at the time, but it had issues where, you know, there was censorship issues. I don't get into the whole problem with ICRA, and RTA solved that because it's just one meta tag for everything and no one's at a disadvantage, right? And then we also do the government advocacy for anything that comes up. And, you know, the last big thing, of course, was age verification in the UK. But like I said, it's such a important topic that it's just not something you can just gloss over in 5 minutes. Give us money because we protect kids for you. It really needs to be a deeper conversation than that.
Leah, we're, make your pitch as well, since people in the audience that are going to give money to Pineapple. What would you tell them? Why should they do it?
As we were discussing before, you know, the performers are the backbone of this industry. Without them, none of us would exist. And we need to protect them, and we need to be there for them, and we need to ensure that they have the support that they need. And, you know, and also I think explaining to people who maybe don't understand the stigma that performers are faced with, and how that impacts every aspect of life, from, you know, not being able to get an Uber, not being able to get an Airbnb, not being able to get a bank account, and so on and so forth. And it rolls and it rolls and it rolls. And for anyone facing these challenges, it's going to take a toll on mental health. And these are things that, you know, a lot of people who aren't in direct contact with the performers, that they don't necessarily understand. So I think just giving people the facts, and as Tim said, you know, sometimes it's not a 5-minute conversation. It's getting to know somebody and giving them the understanding of exactly why we are needed.
Yeah, great. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank, I know that Kat didn't get to talk at this one, but Kat, I will say that Fancentro is doing an amazing job in terms of empowering performers and giving them the sort of financial ability to make these choices. I mean, I think the premium platform development has been such a great thing for allowing performers to have some independence, to make those choices, to avoid bad situations. I want to thank all of you guys for coming in. I know it's really late for a lot of you, or for Leah and Kat. Everybody else, it's a Saturday. Thanks so much. I've learned
Thank
so much.
you, Mike. Thank you.
Actually see you. I know we've dealt before virtually, but I've never actually spoken with you like this.